Joe Scott, Air Force head basketball coach, is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. Joe is set to go into year two of his second stint with Air Force. And looking at this first season, Coach, what did you learn about yourself? Because here you are going cross country during a pandemic, moving, and then dealing with all the individual challenges that the 2020/2021 season experienced.
Well, I mean, just if you're asking what I learned about myself, I mean, I think, under all the circumstances that you just were describing, talking about, uh, I think I learned that I can be, uh, a little calmer, a little more, and I don't know if that's a good thing, a little more patient. And again, at times we know that's a good thing, but there are other times when you're taking over in a program with the challenge that we have, that it's not always about calmness and patience. You actually need possibly the opposites of those to turn around what we're trying to turn around here, the challenges that we face here. But I think the circumstances this past year sort of dictated that, and we just had to do things a certain way because of all those external factors. Because when I look back on this year, I got to be honest. I mean, our first year for me started after this season, April 1st,
Mhm.
because I got hired the prior April 1st to come in and change a program and build a program. And, like I said, meet this challenge in this league at Air Force. And didn't coach our guys one day in April, didn't coach our guys one day in May, didn't coach them one day in June, July, all the time when you take over a program, the beginning stages of, these are the things we're going to do. This is how we're going to do them. These are the reasons why we're doing them. And you're doing them with your players. And we weren't able to do any of those things. So I think given those circumstances, the patience, the more of an understanding was required, needed, given all the things our players were going through,
Yeah.
the upheaval for them, and then factoring in even in the course during the season, you know, the the virus hits and you get upended, and that affects the team, and then it affects certain individuals because we know when you look back on it, I had one guy, I think that out of 43 consecutive days, he was out for 38, quarantine, you know, in, out, and then he was doing well. And the next thing you know, 38 to 43 days, he's in quarantine, and he was never the same after that. So dealing with those things, I think, required sort of patience, understanding. Uh, And I think what year one showed, what we got out of year one was we played our games. I mean, we did a good job. Our players did a good job. Uh, they were vigilant, as best, 18 to 22-year-old kids can be vigilant. They were disciplined that way. And we got our games in. We played 25 games. We played all our league games. So I give our guys tons of credit, when you look back on how strange of a season it was, for all the reasons I just said. Uh, we got that experience to now when I said we started in April 1st of this year building this program. Well, I have 25 games of their attention to really for them to know, oh, we know why coach is doing it this way. I have that and they have that, and we have that history together. So there's a little bit of an advantage as I'm saying, well, we're starting April 1st, but we have those 25 games.
And the fact is, now you get to meet in person more. And I can't, you would know so much more than me, Coach, but you taking over a program and then not even really getting to meet with your guys initially, and the challenges that threw and the wrench that threw. So I'm really excited that you're able to be more hands-on with your guys now more in 2021. How did you feel like going back to last year that you had to be a comforting voice for the players dealing with that upheaval you were talking about, where you were there to support them beyond the regular title of being a head coach where you went a step further to be there for your guys?
Well, and even with that, Brian, I mean, generally the support comes from in normal times. My support is, I take the guys bowling
Nice.
twice a year. You know what I mean? We play softball. We have a cookout. I have a saw, and we're playing for real. I'm finding out who's a good baseball player. Uh, you couldn't do any of that. So even when you talk about the support, or a comforting voice or whatever it is, uh, normal ways that I know I try to do it, meaning, okay, we're out on that court and things are hard and we're working and there's a competitiveness and it's hard. It's difficult. I do that on purpose. The games are hard. We're going to make practice harder than the games. I'm going to be harder than the opponent. I mean, whatever it is, there's a concept there. Well, this year you couldn't do that really because I couldn't take the guys bowling twice, whatever it is. We couldn't go outside and play softball so that there's that sort of, everybody says this today, everything's about relationships. Well, relationships aren't a word. Relationships are actions, relationships are things that you do together. And oftentimes I think for player coach, we're on the court, we're doing something we love. There's a passion, there's an intensity to it. That's okay. And then we all know that, oh, that stopped. And now we move into here and hey, let's go play softball. Let's bowl. Let's do some trivia. Let's talk about a book. You know what I mean? There's other things in life, than just basketball, and I think I have guys over my house, they're with my wife. And so they can see that we're just people who really love basketball
Yeah.
and couldn't do that. So I'm looking forward to that aspect, returning, because I think that lends the normalcy to sort of the relationship that we're going to work hard in basketball. It's going to be difficult. We're going to enjoy that challenge. We're going to welcome sort of the intensity of it. And then these other things that I just said to you, we bring them into play. And that's how everything comes together. The players get a whole picture of the coach gets the whole picture of the players. And I think that's where relationship comes from. And if you don't have those elements, well, you can say the word relationship all day, but if you're not doing the things and aren't able to do the things that create and build that relationship, well, that means it's a whole different sort of situation. So, and we haven't even talked about recruiting.
Yeah.
Yesterday, 2 days ago was the first day that I ever met some of my recruits in person.
It's
You know,
amazing.
so I've said we've had 1 3/8, 1.5 recruiting classes. Because last year when I got here, I was able to bring in, some guys. But out of the 1.5 recruiting classes, right? I've never met them face to face. Yesterday I met, and 2 days I met 4 of them. But I mean, that's a whole different quote unquote way to start a relationship, build a relationship. So just having these things back, hopefully to normal, it goes a long way in building a program, building the foundation, the fundamentals of what you want your program to be and what it's going to be built upon. And if you don't have those things that you're building something upon, well, until you do, you don't really build anything. You need the foundation. And I'm looking forward to really having the opportunity to be able to build the foundation using everything at your disposal, because we need it here at Air Force.
AJ Walker is someone who's helping you build that foundation, led the team in scoring last season. What captivates you most about him and his skill set and the
I,
way he conducts himself?
I think what's I've said about AJ, he listens, and I'm a big believer today that there's a difference between listening and hearing, and there's a difference between seeing and watching.
Interesting.
And I think oftentimes today, the younger generation watches and hears, and they go together, right? And there's a big difference between watching something and seeing something. And I think, for example, you watch a basketball game today, someone watches at the end, they know this team had more points. That guy had 22 points, whatever, but they didn't see how those points and how the victory occurred. the way the team worked together, the little things that occur. Same thing goes with hearing and listen. When you listen, I know you're listening. When I see you doing the things that I said, or I see you
Yes.
doing the things that my assistant coaches are saying, you know, and if you don't see that, then I know, well, you're just hearing and you're not listening. And I think something that he's good at is I think he listens. And I think as the year went along, he listens, he's paying attention. He then tries to put those things into his game, and I think when you can have all the ability in the world. If you don't listen and see, your ability is not going to get to be as great as it can be. So, and I do think going into year two, the seeing element for him and all our guys is going to be better. Seeing the game the way that my staff and I see it, getting them to see why we're doing these things and see those things happen before they happen, because that's what's required. When you do those two things, I think, Bryan, you raise your athleticism. You know what I mean? You see something before, why, you see it
Yes.
coming before it comes, right? Well, you're faster, and now if you have the fundamental skills that go with that, well, now, you're on your way to becoming a really good basketball player, not a really good athlete, a really good basketball player. And that's really important for us. And I think AJ has those fundamentals. We're working year one and hopefully year two better at sort of the seeing part, because he already has the listening. We can get that in there. And then we get a couple other guys growing that way. We add some new players who are a little bit better that way. Well, that's how we're going to build this program.
As they say, the game slows down, I would think, and the anticipatory skills will be that much more heightened with the work you're talking about. We're joined by Air Force head coach Joe Scott. I'm Bryan Fenley. If I were to sit right next to you, coach, and I had some film of my work as a basketball player, what are the first things that you're going to say about it as far as your mental checklist of what is most important to you?
Well, probably what's most important to me is the word see again. You know, it's guys that see the game. That's why, for me, and I just said this, I was with Fran Fraschilla the other day, and we actually were talking about Royce O'Neale, who I coached at Denver. He's on the Jazz. And, I said to him, he was a very good passer and rebounder. And those two things go, and you give me in what we do, passers and rebounders, well, we're going to be hard to beat. I think that's true of everybody, but I know for us, that's first and foremost. And they sort of go together. A passer sees things before they occur. A passer, like you said, I don't know, is the game slowing down? I just know that he knows what he's looking for ahead of time. He knows what to do with the ball before he gets it. A passer sees that whatever action you're doing is going to draw in this help, and then that ball's already going across the court for a cross-court pass. So in recruiting, looking for guys who see the game, who are good passers, because those guys make other guys better. Those guys make a team be a team, and guys that see that way, they know where the ball's going ahead of time. They know where that shot that was taken over here, where it's going ahead of time, and they're already on the way to get the rebound. Rebounders are rebounders oftentimes because they see that they're one step ahead, and then you got to have that sort of drive, that motor to go get it. But to me, I know that's the number one thing we look for in recruiting. And if I was going to look at you, I'm looking for, that element. And then if you come and we work you out or something like that, I'm doing things in our workouts where I'm trying to see if you, because when you see ahead of time, you open your mouth and you talk. A lot of coaches are always big on communicate, talk. Okay. We can say that all we want. Okay. There might be a reason they're not talking. Well, one, we know they might be on their phones all day, and that's not the way it has been. They're not as verbal. But for me, I'm a big believer. It's because in order to talk ahead of time, you have to see ahead of time. And if you're not seeing that ahead of time, then you're not able to open your mouth and say, I got rebound or I got out, because you're too late. And in this game, if you're late, you're done, you know, and especially, like I said, guys that see they're one step ahead, they're more athletic, and that's sort of the reasons why, because we have to figure out ways, it makes the game easier for everybody, but it gives you a way to like sort of promote teamness all the time by valuing the passer, uh, and the guy that knows when to cut, the guy that knows when to go set that screen ahead of time. He sees it ahead of time. You know what? Those are things that just help you be a better coach.
If I ever had the chance to be coached by you, I would hope you would fix the hitch in my jump shot. That would be number one. But speaking of seeing, when did you see that Royce O'Neale was NBA ready? He had that caliber of a talent.
I just remember when we recruited Royce to Denver. I mean, it was Denver, and he came, and I remember this story. He came to Denver, and I think he had something wrong with his hand the first, right when he got to school, and we start to work with you, and he couldn't work out. We couldn't do what we were doing. So I remember telling one of my assistants, "Hey, go talk with Royce. Make sure you're talking to him. Make sure you're saying, hey, how you doing? You're doing good, kid. Don't worry about it. Like make sure we kept him where we need to keep him." And then he got healthy, and right off the bat, uh, his freshman year, we won 22 games. Uh, and we had a really good year. And right off the bat, what I saw is what we just talked about. I mean, I remember our first scrimmage. These, they were pressing us, they were trapping us. It was like helter skelter type of basketball from whoever we were scrimmaging. I put Royce in. Soon as he went in, cross court pass, getting trapped, throwing it to whoever's out. Things that you don't coach. You can say,
Wow.
hey, that's what you're looking for. 6'5" freshman, put him in immediately. That's what I said, whoa, we got something here. And then as we went through the year, watching games, we were in the Sun Belt at the time, and then we went to the WAC this sophomore year, and we won the WAC with him. But the other thing I noticed was, as he was that kind of passer and helper, uh, he was very physical. He had this, like he had this body where bodies bounced off him. We had a guy where they were bouncing off him. I remember looking at film after a game, and against could have been, I don't know, back then, in the North Texas Sun Belt. And I'm like, Royce was hip checking their guys on rebounds. We were done getting hip checked,
Wow.
and that's when I said, this guy at 6'5" who can dribble the ball, who has that kind of physicality and sees the game that way, those things are rare, I think. And then he individually on his own made himself into a better shooter, and as he kept growing, he's taken himself and those sort of gifts that I said to you, he's individually worked on his game and stayed with it and kept growing, and he gets credit for that. He went to Germany, I believe, and did well. And, I just give the Jazz tons of credit for having the type of organization that was able to see that, value it. And I remember talking to NBA scouts, and that what I said about Royce was, if you value certain things, right? That guy, he just plays to win. Everything about his game shows up in the W column. When the game's over, they call them stat sheet stuffers.
Mhm.
Everything that he did was designed for the team to win. I said, that's the kind of player he is. And he's turned himself into a good long range shooter. You get a guy like that who makes shots playing with the other right kind of guys. Well, he's a very important piece to their team.
The team that you had in 2004, and I see that picture behind you, which is when you won the conference championship, went on to the NCAA tournament, the bliss that brings you. When trying to recreate it, how have you adapted the way you are as a coach since then?
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about some of those things earlier
Mhm.
with relationship building, uh, you know, doing those things, right in the recruiting process. That's been the challenge so far. But just knowing how important it is to right from the start, the first conversations you're having with the kids and their families, talking about the things we're talking about, then talking about this team here yesterday. Like I said to a couple of the guys that were here who are going to be coming here, you know, that's year 4, and every one of those guys we recruited. And
Yes.
I think that there's something to that, because when you embark on this and you start from the same starting point, and the only voice you ever hear is this, when you only hear this message, this vision, that goes a long way. You know, when you take over a program and a guy's a senior and a guy's a junior, they're willing. I mean, they want to do it, but they have 3 and 4 years of prior experiences and other voices saying things. And we all know they're not the same things. And that's challenging, you know? So I think, just knowing that, having had this experience before, but now doing it older, just knowing how important that is, uh, sticking with that, you know, it's going to take, you know, 3 and 4 years of doing what we're doing, building it piece by piece, you know, creating the program we want. You know, we're allowed to, you know, you're allowed to do things, or seeing from our current guys, oh, they're starting to get it. They're doing it on their own. They're not doing it because the coach is there making them
Yeah.
do it. You know what I mean? That's the kind of program we want to have. Uh, and then as you go over 3 years of bringing in new guys, putting them in after you talk to them and they know it, and they say they know what it means to come to Air Force. And then they get here and they see their teammates doing exactly what the coach told them it was going to be like. And I think just having the sort of calmness to stay that course, and you're going to have your ups and downs, is going to be a challenge. I mean, it's going to be a battle, but sort of knowing that, knowing this is the way to do it, stay with it, and get those kinds of guys that are behind me.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, because like you said, you know, every time I walk in my office and I look at that, it's a reminder. But really, what I am reminded of is the kinds of people those guys are in that picture. You know what I mean? The kind that team's getting inducted into the Air Force Sports Hall of Fame in September. And I know I've talked to some of those guys and been able to connect with them, and just knowing the kinds of guys they are, you know, and really how tough they were, how tough they are, how smart they were, how smart they are, sort of the you know, and all the words, you know, today that oh, the grit they had, and well, they had fight and grit when nobody was saying those words,
Yeah.
you know.
Before they were
And that,
cliches.
and that's what I think of when I see that picture, and that's what makes me know. I know that there are kids out there that are like that, and those are the kinds of guys we're trying to recruit and bring in here and develop that way. And that's what we have to do. We have to recruit that way and develop that way. And if we do, that's our best chance.
Yeah, in due time, it'll all work out. My final question for you, Joe Scott is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. For those of us who have not taken in a graduation ceremony at Air Force, what are we missing? And particularly seeing some of the guys that you worked with last year, like Chris Joyce and others, and what it was to take in that experience for them. What was that like, you think?
Yeah, I just think I had somebody say to me yesterday who has just been here for sort of say 6 months, 8 months. You know, coach, you know, you see that jubilation, you see that joy, you see the pride, and it's the pride found. I don't even know if pride's a real, because pride can be, you can be too prideful. You know, it's like I'm talking about the sheer, like, sort of just being so proud as a parent, because they know what what they've accomplished. You know, and to your question, you really see that when they throw those hats in the air. When you know, when you see, you know, see them, and you know that. Uh, and then you go back to when you've been here, and you go back to when they come here as freshmen, and they start with basic training, you know, and you see that growth, and that's what I think you see in those cadets who are now officers, you know, second lieutenants in the Air Force. you almost see sort of like, I'm going to use the word again, this joy, that a sense of accomplishment, that, and it's almost like when you're on a team and you work so hard together, and you know why you're doing things, you know how to do them, you're doing them together. You don't know you're going to win that game. You don't know you're going to win that championship. It's a process, and you stay with it, and you stay with it. And then you do win that championship. There's a sense of accomplishments that's a shared accomplishment. It's not when those hats go up in the air, that's not each kid just thinking about themselves. You know what I mean? That's a group of 1,000, you know, cadets that have become second lieutenants, that they know that they accomplished something together, and they've needed in some way, shape, or form, almost every one of them to at some point in time together. And I think that's why you see that sort of, unabashed joy. And I think that's why it's powerful, and those parents that are so proud, I mean, that they know what they've accomplished. They don't think it, they know it. And that's a great question, because, when you see that, it's like, no matter what, boy, it's been worth it. And, Chris Joyce, Keaton Van Solen, Mika Kaya, my guys, I feel really good. Right. And I only knew him for 1 year. I feel really good, though, that they're going to do really good in life, that I'm going to know them when they're 35 and 30. And I know they're going to be successful in whatever they're doing. And that's really what this place is all about.
The world is a better place with those guys. And you speak about the joy. I can't wait to see the joy as your team continues to come together and has the success that you've been able to show over your career. Joe Scott, head coach for Air Force. I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks so much, Joe. I really
All right.
appreciate
Good,
this.
good seeing you, Bryan. Thanks for having me on.